Annie here for stage 2 of our question and answer on swimrun. So in the last episode we went into what swimrun is, who it's for and how the race format actually works. And today we are going into how to choose your race, because there's quite a lot of events out there and swimrun isn't as standard as other sports can be. How to choose your partner as well, it's you compete with a partner, and also how to train, because it's a new sport, I have no idea. I've got my first swimrun coming up. Alan is an experienced swim runner.
Yep.
And triathlete and all that kind of stuff. So you've got 2 levels of experience here. Nothing and something. And so we're just going to chat and see what questions I've got, what answers Alan's got. Just talk us through the kind of, I don't know, the locations, the different kind of swims you can have, the different terrain. And yeah, tell us about your experience in that and what you think we should be thinking about as people choosing our first race,
Sure.
or maybe our second, or maybe our third. What kind of variation we've got.
I think generally speaking, you have the sort of the longest sort of the World Championships, which is sort of 10k of swimming and 60 odd k of running. Then after that one race, which is pretty standalone, being the World Champs, there is sort of distance that you're doing, which can be sort of between 4 and 6k of swimming, and 30 to 40k of running, and that is becoming sort of the industry standard, for want of a better word. Around those sort of distances is what kind of a lot of the OTLO and the Breca sort of events are. There is also now sprint events starting to emerge, which are sort of roughly half that again. So if you're new to sort of swimrun and a little bit sort of want to sort of ease yourself into it, a bit like a triathlon, perhaps sort of try sprints. If you're feeling a bit more confident and want a big day out, then
I'm neither, but I went straight for a marathon, I went straight for an Olympic distance, so I'll just go straight for the normal, I think, with this, and then probably backtrack and be like, I'll just go sprint.
Well, ultimately, it's just the intensity is not quite as full on if you're doing a longer day, so it's a slightly long day, probably get better value for your money. So.
There you go, yeah. Thank God I'm doing a long one. That's cool, and then, so they're all on trails, right? They're all, the standard for swimrun is wilderness, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you could be on the coast, sort of almost sort of going sort of coastal trails and sort of dipping into the sea. You can have ones like in Sweden where it's sort of island hopping, and OTLO means island to island, and that's how it's all started.
Yeah.
So
it was a beer race, wasn't it? Well, not a beer, it was a
drunk
race.
Bet. Yeah, exactly. I think that was over 10 years ago now, so it's been going for a while.
Creeping up on us endurance athletes.
And then you may have ones, sort of Breca, for example, has a lot up in the Lake District. They are going sort of up over sort of mountains or hills, through sort of lakes. So again, sort of a different challenge, because it's a lot more sort of vertical challenges, as opposed to the Swedish ones, which tend to be sort of flatter.
Okay.
And then some races may have a larger swim portion. So they had started one called the 1,000 Lakes in Germany last year, which had 10k of swimming, but only about 40k running. So you had a lot of swimmers that sort of really attracted to that one.
Yeah.
Because it obviously favoured them. And interestingly enough, some of the kit actually changed as a result of that. So there were more flippers being used that day.
You can use flippers?
You can. You've got to carry them.
And you want to take your shoes off and hassle.
True. It ended up backfiring on a lot of teams in the end. So it was quite interesting. They shot off to start with, and then sort of I think their legs wore out.
But it's the same as we talked about with paddles, and we'll go into in the gear episode next time. Like, unless you're training well with these things, you're using different muscles. When you put flippers on, like, it's much more kind of calfy and
exactly.
And after running. Exactly. Okay, good. Not gonna start looking into flippers. It's too late. Okay, cool. And then I'm doing a sea swim.
Yep.
But on hindsight, I probably would have preferred a lake swim, just because I feel like it's safer. Just I don't know, just because there's not a tide and it's less likely to be churny. So can you give me some confidence around the sea swim? But just talk about
absolutely.
the differences in general. Obviously, floatability is different and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so obviously when it comes to sea, there's certain sort of more variables that come in. So like I say, you've got the tides, you've got the waves, but there will be more sort of safety on hand as a result. Also, like you say, the salt water. So you sit high in the water, you'll be in the wetsuit, so the swimming will be a bit easier from that perspective, and it will be stunning. You'll be sort of hugging the coast. When you're doing a sea swim, you're never going to be well, chances are you're never going to be too far away, because you'll be swimming sort of around, sort of maybe from one bay to the other, or sort of just navigating around a bit of the coastline.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes in the lakes you'll be crossing a larger body of water, so that's a win, sort of, if you're sort of maybe a bit nervous about crossing bodies of water. So it's each their own, and I think a big part of choosing what your race is going to be is look at sort of what events are on hand, and if you're both strong swimmers, maybe pick one that's sort of more favours the swimmers. If you're a bit of a whippet, then pick sort of a mountainous one, so obviously you'll be flying up the hills, that gives you an advantage. I love the mountainous ones because myself and my teammate are sort of a bit lighter than some of the sort of big Swedish athletes that can power themselves through the water, but when it comes to actually going up hills, they sort of we come into our own a bit more.
Yeah.
So sort of picking it in terms of what maybe gives you an advantage, but also what appeals to you, what's going to be the most enjoyable day out. And if you like sort of going to the coast, then sort of pick a coast one.
Yeah, well, I've chosen mine because I've always wanted to go to the Gower Peninsula. I heard about it when I was surfing a few years ago, and I just heard it's awesome. So I was going to go to a week kite surfing before the event. I thought, no, just stick to one thing. But yeah, you're right in terms of there's enough variation out there now to find the thing that suits you. Right? Like, there's quite a few companies. So you got Otelo and Breca, which to me seem like, I don't know, the two kind of premium ones who are dominating. But there's loads actually. There's UK Swimrun, there's Love Swimrun, and there's some in Germany, some in France.
Yeah, loads. Yeah, loads in Sweden as well.
Oh, really?
Sort of, that pops up. I think pretty much you can race every weekend in Sweden. There are so many in this sort of little independent companies. But yeah, Otelo is obviously the original, and Breca first in the UK, and they're sort of both sort of set great industry standards. Haven't done any of the other sort of companies, but some of my friends have had great times.
So we'll find out how they went on.
Yeah, it's great. You're getting to meet all these new people and just sort of sharing these experiences.
Yeah, it does sound like, compared to a triathlon, which is just much more kind of dogged and just like head down, go, and you grimace on your own. I can imagine in those moments of grimace with this, I'm going to be laughing with my teammate because we're just like, this is I'm cold and I'm fucking miserable.
Exactly.
And it's fun because you've got that person to share.
Yeah, the camaraderie is huge.
Awesome. Okay, good. That's going to be exciting. Hopefully. So choosing your swimrun partner, whether it's a friend or a stranger, what questions should we be asking our potential teammates?
I think you'd be best off, if you don't know the individual, going for coffee, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with this person. You're going to be registering, probably sort of organising accommodation the night before and the night after. You're going to be spending however many hours during the day, and there will be times during the day when one party is suffering and the other's feeling good, and vice versa. So you're going to need to be sort of patient with each other, supporting each other, and so you'll either love each other by the end of the day, or maybe.
And then in terms of speed and stuff, like, should you be matching off with someone who swims and runs at a similar pace to you? Like, because you can use a cable, right? In terms of, and we'll go into that in the next episode with gear, but that I presume is so that you stick relatively together, and then from what I've read, if you're a stronger swimmer, you can help. I don't know, pull, but you can help lead the person out.
Yeah.
Drafting, obviously, but also just sticking together and see.
Yeah, true. I so that's a good point in terms of with swimming in particular. If there's one much stronger than the other, a cable is a good idea. Sort of tow rope, and there's a company called Swimrun Shop, I think. But if there's one stronger swimmer, then you don't want that person to be having to swim slowly, constantly checking over, because you can get very, very cold very, very quickly.
Okay.
I did a race with a chap, a different chap, not Hamish, my regular partner last year, called the Rockman in Norway, which is a stunning event in sort of Norwegian fjord, but the water's very cold, and I got very, very cold because we didn't have a tow system, so I had to sort of soft paddle. So if it potentially is going to be a cold race and there is one stronger swimmer, then you definitely want to consider a tow system, just so more for the stronger swimmer's benefit as much as anything else, plus they can give the person a bit of a tow, because you can work as hard as you like pulling them. You need to practice with it, but you don't have to use it. So when you get on the run, you don't, or if it turns out you're evenly matched on the swim, great, but it's much better to sort of have it and not need it than sort of get cold and not have it. So
awesome. Okay, good. So in summary, we do want, like, ideally you match up in terms of speed, just with, or attitude, friendship, and speed.
Yeah, and you've got to be aware who's stronger at what, and you've got to be sort of go into this race sort of knowing full well this person's slightly stronger at the swim and this person's slightly stronger at the run, and it is what it is.
Yeah, I'll come and ask you.
If you are going to use hand paddles, I would definitely recommend sort of starting sort of slowly. You can get sort of finger paddles, which are sort of smallish paddles that you can start swimming with, and then build up. You may see some of the sort of the Swedish kind of elite athletes with basically dinner plates, and if you try to sort of do that, your arms would fall off after about sort of half a k. So you need to just build up that sort of strength, endurance. And then they probably won't like you swimming with trainers on in the swimming pool. Or what you can do is you can get drag pants, which are these kind of billowy sort of pants that go over the top of your sort of costume, which look really attractive.
Oh,
you can also.
The sport just gets weirder and weirder.
Well, swimmers have been using them for years because it just slows you down. And what you can also do, which is probably a bit better in terms of simulating trainers, is you can buy ankle bands, which is a bit of material. If you want, you can just use sort of rubber bands or whatever, but just hold your feet together and sort of stops you kicking a bit, and your feet just drag a bit more through the water.
You get that sensation.
So it's kind of simulating it, and then you can pop in a pool buoy as well, sort of so you can feel what it's like. So you have the hand paddles, and your sort of feet are a little immobilised, so you're getting that extra strain sort of through your sort of upper body. So you're sort of preparing it. For.
I'm thinking. I mean, what are we at? I'm 6 weeks after the event, so I'm kind of thinking it's too late to even start with paddles, and I don't know.
Finger paddles you'd be okay with.
Yeah,
I think so.
And they're not that much. It just adds. I guess it just adds webbing almost.
Yeah, it gives you a little bit more purchase in the water.
Yeah.
And then worst case scenario, if you start getting a sore shoulder, you can stop using it.
Yeah. On the training, bearing in mind, lots of triathletes are trying out swimrun. What would you say in terms like the difference between training for a triathlon and training for a swimrun? Obviously, the way you're managing your distances is different. But again, could you highlight the differences and what you would recommend?
Sure. So, a bit like triathlon, I'd say a bit of strength work is always a good thing, especially if it's potentially going to be sort of a hilly course, or you're going to be clambering out of the water. So, sort of strengthening up your legs is a good shout. Again, with the upper body strength, if you can sort of do a few press ups and whatnot, because you can be using hand paddles, so you're sort of increasing that upper body strength as well. In terms of the training, perfect if you've got your partner with you. If not, then going to a lake. I use sort of Shepperton Lake, which is just sort of south and sort of Surrey way, and there is lots of these sort of lakes will be have your sort of swim course, and it might be a 400 metre and a 700 metre, and then they'll have a running loop around. So you can go in, swim 400 metres, then run a couple of k, and just go in and practice that sort of transitioning in and out, and you'll pick up things.
There's so much to do. No, it's true. But yeah, of course.
So just doing that, and you'll notice little things, that sort of little tips and tricks in terms of. It was random, but I kept getting grit in my trainers when I first started it, because I had ankle sort of socks, and so I actually had to sort of change my socks so it's slightly higher than ankle socks, and it just stopped the grit working its way in as you're coming in and out of the transition, and obviously you're kicking up sediment or sort of sand in the water, and that can sort of make its way into your trainers.
Yeah, let's talk about it more, because I was told not to wear shorts at all, but we'll talk about it in the gear thing. We'll debate that, all the socks, no socks, long socks, short socks. Cool. And then, in the same way as the triathlon camps, I presume the swimrun camps are popping up? Yeah,
I think there's a couple out there. I think there's going to be a few more sort of coming along, so watch your space. And they'll be doing, in something like a swimrun camp, there'll be sort of plenty of running, some trail running, there'll be obviously sort of practicing the transitions, doing swim run, open water swimming, sort of working with your teammate, because if you can go on a swimrun camp with your teammate, that's even better.
Yeah, of course.
So all these things, just so you sort of gain sort of racecraft and confidence. So when you go into that race, it's almost sort of muscle memory, a lot of it.
Yeah, of course.
Practicing sort of taking off your goggles, where you're going to put your hand paddles, and little things like this that you don't necessarily think about until you start training. And when you start training, you realise, I'm going to be running with these hand paddles. Do I sort of tuck them down my shorts? I'm starting to get hot. Do I peel down my wetsuit? And so it's just practicing all these things, and even a little bit of teammate teamwork. So my teammate and I will just sort of unzip each other sort of as we're coming out of the water. If it's a long run, so you're not going to overheat, and then sort of as you're coming back into transition, sort of being aware of it, so cap going on, all these little things that can speed the process up.
Okay, cool. Well, let's touch more on that next time with the gear, because
Sure.
I've got loads of questions about that.
No
Because I
worries.
didn't even think that I'd take my swim cap off. And obviously there's different wetsuits, there's front, there's back zips, and all that kind of stuff. So let's talk about that next episode. So that was choosing your event, picking your teammate, and training. Hope it was useful.